Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Profiles in Risk. For today, I am your host, Nick Lamparelli. This is a special episode because we have a huge announcement. As you can see in my other window, or if you're listening online, you might want to go onto YouTube to check this out. But I have Carey Nadeau of Open Data Nation, and she's joining me here. And we have a big announcement to make, and that is that Carey is Carey Ann is actually going to be guest hosting on Profiles in Risk, and she's going to be bringing an entirely new element to Profiles in Risk. By the way, Carey Ann, welcome.
Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to the opportunity. Everyone keeps saying I have a great podcasting voice, so I'm glad to be able to put it good to service here.
Yeah, you certainly do, and you're going to be bringing a different element. As much as I feel like I can ask intelligent questions about data science and AI and machine learning, frankly, I don't do that on a day-to-day basis. It's above my pay grade. But guess who does do that?
This girl. Yeah, thanks,
right.
Nick. That's exactly right. I'm really excited to sort of build off of the foundation that you've established here with Profiles in Risk and sort of add a new direction, add some more coverage of folks who have a focus in some of these cutting edge emerging technologies, who are bringing new products to market that I think will disrupt the insurance industry and that your audience might be interested in paying attention to as they're setting their priorities for next year and thinking about what the future of insurance really looks like. So happy to be here. So excited to get started.
Yeah, what I think what's really interesting is I've been wanting to go in that direction, and I felt like even the guests that we've had on that had some expertise in either data science or artificial intelligence, machine learning, or whatever, I felt as though the questions were at a very superficial level. So there is this like opportunity for, I think, an audience that's hungry to dig in a little bit, talk about some of the, go beyond the surface, maybe not PhD level analytics, but something that's a little kind of sort of like the conversation before I hit record. We were talking about AI with marine insurance. It just seems very fitting in this day and age that the audience wants more.
That's right. I think we're going to be able to ask a lot of provocative questions about how data can be used and maybe should be used responsibly, and what kind of questions that we can answer, which at the end of the day, data is the raw resource, but how you put it to good use is where we're seeing a lot of really innovative, thoughtful approaches to data science and machine learning. So yeah, I'm aiming to really feature people, companies, technologies that are in that space. And while ODN, my company, also is in that space, we build machine learning models from city administrative data. I also would like to, hear from and get the perspectives of folks who bring different sources of data from outside of the industry to insurance, which I think is a new sort of fresh approach. And we'll be talking to Sasha Dewitt from Habit pretty soon. She's bringing in AI and artificial intelligence from home devices. I think there's a lot of things like that where we can really push the boundaries of what is insurance and what data analytics and data science means for insurance going forward. So yeah, I think we're ready to dive in and really get to explore some of these really fun use cases.
Yep. So for the audience sake, this is awesome news. It's going to allow us to get really content that's going to be expand. But if you want to learn more about Carey Nadeau, I've actually interviewed her already, so I have that teed up. That will be coming out on November 19th. So it'll be on that date. So if you're listening to this now, you wait a few more days, you get to learn all about Open Data Nation. And you'll learn a lot more about Carey Nadeau and all of her guests in future episodes of Profiles in Risk.
Yeah, if you're looking for some good listening on your Thanksgiving drive out to your respective destinations, maybe tune in and listen to Open Data Nation's podcast. And happy to be your host going forward and continuing the conversation. Thanks, Nick, for, I speak on behalf of all of your audience for the audience that you've built and the discussions that you've started. I feel like you're really passing the baton, and it's a great person to be grabbing it from. So thanks for all of your effort, and glad to be taking it forward.
Yep. I can't wait for the day for you to interview me. That's going to be awesome.
That sounds like a great plan. Let's do it.
Okay. Awesome. So for everyone that's listening, following up this particular conversation, we talk to Sasha Dewitt. So hold your horses and we'll transition right over to that.
See you soon.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Profiles in Risk. I am your host, Nick Lamparelli, and as you can see on the screen, or if you're listening, my guest host for today is Carey Nadeau of Open Data Nation. And if you were listening to the intro to this particular podcast, you know that Carey Nadeau is going to be a guest host on Profiles in Risk, going to be doing all kinds of cool stuff. And our first combined guest under Carey Ann's guidance and recommendation is Sasha Dewitt. Sasha is the co-founder and COO of both Muesli and Habit Analytics. I can't wait to dig into this a little bit more. Sasha, welcome from, I think, Mexico City.
Thank you. Hi, thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, from warm Mexico City.
Apparently you've been flying for quite some time, so we appreciate you coming on. I get exhausted just flying, an hour to New York City, so I know that you must be exhausted as well. So I'm going to kick right into this particular episode and ask you if you could just quickly describe Habit and Muesli. What are they, and what are you doing there?
Yeah, of course. So the way to put it, Muesli is an IoT platform that connects services and that connects devices and allows for insurers to connect and offer services on top of the functionality from the devices. And then Habit so Muesli was acquired by Habit technically, and Habit will take in all of the data that comes from the devices and then does behavioral profiling on top of the data that comes in. And so we use that to enrich the services and then also enrich the data that comes in for insurers to be able to use it for pricing and claims and risk mitigation, if that makes sense. So the two companies are actually are really one. It's really all Habit, but Muesli started off as the original IoT platform.
I see. So how did it start? What problem did you see in the market or in certain industries that you felt as though required Habit to be formed?
Yeah, of course. So it started the company, and so Muesli was first built as the IoT platform. I'm sorry for the background noise at the airport. So Muesli was started as a way to do when there was sort of the boom in IoT, and we had all of these really cool, fancy devices that were expensive, and everybody was able to now control their thermostat or their alarms or cameras from their phone. And we saw that there was this really great functionality that you could add on top of it. So there's the novelty of getting to use your smartphone to control your home, but there's actually a lot more that you can do with that, and which includes in particular offering services on top of it. And so Muesli and Habit was born out of the idea of there's a lot more that especially insurers can do by being able to be a part of the connected home and offer new services and solving the problem of increasing new touch points and having a better understanding of what's going on inside someone's home and being able to better protect people and better protect the assets that insurers were recovering.
So Sasha,
so that's sort of that's how it morphed into what we are today.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, Sasha, do you think this business could have existed 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or is it really leveraging this new technology to fundamentally where, users, I don't even want to say the name Alexa right now because she's listening, like now everyone sort of has one in their home, but 5-10 years ago, maybe not. So is it sort of piggybacking on the transition of, homes becoming more connected, technology becoming more ubiquitous as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the connected home, and it's the smartphone. So A lot of the data so there's the services that you can add that's on top of connected devices and being able to do lower cost security services. But then there's also sort of the prevalence of smartphones, which is where a lot of data, the most useful data will come from. But I think in terms of what you're asking about 10 years ago, yeah, there's just much higher usage rates, and it's much more common for people to have connected devices in their home, and much more common for people to have smartphones now than 10 years ago. Do we sort of see this as like the next step? So in terms of IoT, in terms of using data from connected devices, the first sort of launch of this was with cars and with telematics, and being able to have connected cars, dongles that you plug in, and then insurers went in and realized, oh, we can actually understand safe driving habits and can offer policies and offer discounts and rewards for safe driving off of this. And so this is the telematics for the home, if you will. This is saying, hey, let's do the same thing that we did for cars, but instead we're doing it for the house, where we understand people care about the security and they're protecting their home, and people care about maintaining their home and protecting it or mitigating any risk, as opposed to sort of, if you see a leak, letting it happen, just kind of being able to offer more preventative services on top of it.
So I think that's really interesting, the analogy, the telematics for the home. I like that a lot. I think that's a great tagline, but I'm curious to know, telematics is a device, it's a piece of technology you plug into your car, where carriers are getting a lot of value from the use cases. So you've mentioned a few here for the home, security. I know there's another for aging, sounds like leaking pipes. Maybe you could dive deep on one of those journeys to help the audience understand like one discrete application where you've been maybe seeing a lot of traction.
Yeah, of course. So the best use case, or the biggest use case we have right now, and sort of the low-hanging fruit, was working in PNC and using it to build to offer a sort of simple, like, connected home security service. So with one of our major customers, they use us to offer a low-cost monthly security service where you bring whatever device you want. So because of the platform, insurers can be device agnostic, and connected to the platform, you can control everything from one place. And then on top of it, the insurer sells their security system, sells a call center and a security platform where if there's an alarm that goes off from one of these devices, the customer is then notified and told, hey, we noticed that an alarm went off. Do you want us to deploy the firefighters or to deploy a security service to go in and check? And this will be done if there's a fire alarm or if there's intrusion that's detected. And so it's a really interesting use case in offering people a very affordable, like $5 a month, to be able to have like a high class security system and security service come to your home and feel like your home's protected. And then on top of that, it's a new way to encourage customers to actually share data, where they feel like, okay, if I share the data from these devices and I'm sharing the data from my phone, I'm actually getting something really valuable in return, which is peace of mind and security for my home. And so it's a very transparent process where customers understand that what they're sharing, the data that they're sharing, and the specific data that they're sharing is actually getting them something in return, and they know what it is. It's a call, or it's someone visiting their home and putting out a fire if they're not there, or it's being able to deploy someone immediately if movement's detected when we know that someone's not home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like a win-win-win. I didn't even think about the play of like it actually building trust with the device itself, and the folks or the companies who are producing these devices probably really love you for it.
We hope so. That's what we're trying to do. It's increasing the use cases for the devices themselves, increasing the market that it's applicable to, and really adding an extra layer of value. And obviously for insurers, we see the value in increasing, and really building out the trust with your customers, and being able to have more interactions aside from the typical, here's your bill, and or when here's your bill, or we need to submit a claim, and then getting fought for it. Now it's, hey, we're going to protect this asset, and we're going to protect you, And on top of it, now we have this data, and so we know, like, when a claim is filed, oh, actually, like, this is legit. The data backs it up, and there's less friction in the entire process. So we think that it's a win for insurers. It's a win for customers. Makes for a more seamless, user-friendly process, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of the win for insurance, in the insurance ecosystem, it's ever since its design 300 years ago, it's been very rear mirror focused, looking in the rear view mirror, very actuarial focus, requiring actual loss experience. So you have data savvy actuaries, but they're used to looking in the rear view mirror, not in real time or forward looking, which is potentially the data that you're bringing in. So how much resistance or any issues that have popped up with insurers or even regulators who have also kind of settled into, have the actuaries check the numbers, how is there a problem with this kind of data versus the kind that they're used to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm sure Carey faces this as well with bringing in new data sets. So for us, it's it's kind of a paradigm shift in how you're thinking about your underwriting and about what you're doing with data, because you don't need the rear mirror thinking of like 30 years of data. Like, if you actually know you have real time data and you know what's going on, you can really make you can act faster, and you don't need that 30 years of data. You have a much shorter tail for it. And there's definitely a pushback at times where some people that we speak to, and especially on the innovation side, they get it and they understand this is the future. This is how we need to really, use data and leverage the fact that there is this new data source. But at the same time, because of the way that the models have been built and the way that legacy systems are established, the biggest question is sort of this acquisition of like, we want this data and we want to offer these services and this is totally what we want to do, but we don't actually know how to think about even implementing it, right? So that's sort of that's what we've been working on, really pushing through and setting up the process where it's like, this is how you use these new data sources, and it's kind of while we're fully a platform, there's a teaching process, and there's a lot of education that goes on our side where it's like, hey, this is this is the way to use these new data sources and to think about it. And I like to use the telematics example a lot, where there's a totally new data set that didn't exist, and it just takes a bit of a push to get people to buy in and agree, like, okay, we need to have some updated models and we need to think about this a little differently. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does, Sasha, and I appreciate the shout out, because we absolutely deal with the same thing at Open Data Nation. And so one of the ways we've solved it, I'm curious to know if you've encountered the same process, is to actually, as a sort of first entry and first conversation with the insurance carriers, actually not focus on the very heavily regulated pricing discussion and pricing models. It sounds like some of the value out of your product is actually on loss prevention, and that tends to be a little less regulated. For ODN, we focus on underwriter risk selection, where there's a little bit more flexibility on the commercial side. Curious to know if sort of your go-to-market strategy has been to sort of circumvent or get creative with some of the regulations that might be in place.
Yes. So yeah, I think part of it is definitely been on. So for us, the go-to-market has actually been more focused on just building out even the services part. So really entering in and saying, hey, there's actually a totally new value proposition of customer engagement and of getting people comfortable with sharing data, and that's the services where there isn't really a concern on the aside from European, where there's European concern because of privacy laws and GDPR, which we're completely compliant with. So it's fortunately we meet our customers' GDPR requirements. But so on the regulatory side, we haven't really had any pushback. on using it for underwriting and claims. But over time, the strategy is sort of, hey, we'll prove, give it some time, and then you can actually see how this works into your in prevention and in your claims, and comparing this data to your old data. So it's more offering, here's our value proposition from the get-go, and gives you time to sort of to do research and to analyze and see how the data actually fits in and how it's really improving your processes.
So I have, I would say from a sales perspective, what's it like? You've kind of discussed, Carey Ann brought up different, a way to a go-to market, but selling into insurance, have you, it's well known that the insurance ecosystem has a long sales cycle. And so if you miss a potential budget, you usually have to wait a year. What advice can you give to other startups that are tech-centric, that are used to moving quickly, maybe in other entrepreneurial startups, coming into insurance where selling into this environment takes a lot longer? Is there anything that you've learned or any advice that you can give to those startups, that might be able to help them?
I wish I think it's just something you have to be prepared for and mindful for, that it's a long sales process. Long, I think, is an understatement. I guess my only advice, and I think this is how Carey Ann and I know each other, is leveraging the network that you have and doing things like being a part of the partnership fund for New York City and working which is with New York, and doing the FinTech up, things like that, that really gets you much more in touch with the network that you're selling into and that you're working with, and getting to learn from them on developing the product. It makes the process, while the process is still long, there's a lot of growth and a lot of and a lot of value that comes out of it. So it helps so I think it's just while sorry about the noise, there's some guys on deck. It's sort of just take advantage of the cycle to just constantly be improving the product, and you're always selling. But yeah, the sales cycle, it's tough. Find it and then hire. And I guess the best thing is hiring a really kick-ass salesperson.
Yeah.
But
that is
I wish I had better advice than that.
Sasha, that is advice that I have been, guests that have come on, and I've pushed very hard. It's one of the most disappointing things I see with insurtech startups is these are brilliant people, but they think the brilliance extends to sales, and sales is a completely different skill set. And it's the one thing that I see that's lacking is the inability to sell into the cycle. And I think they're missing a huge opportunity by not having a professional salesperson lead that effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll pick up where
Carey Ann, I want to hear what you have to say about this. I'd love to get.
Yeah, it's a thorn, but also I think an opportunity for companies that are coming into the space to get a little creative. I recently read a report that about 70% of all pilots that insurance carriers do are originated from an accelerator or an incubator. So I do think in this space there is a deep concentration of carriers looking to incubators and accelerators to sort of pre-qualify companies for initial conversations. At least for us, and Sasha mentioned this, but this is how we first met, was both of our companies participated in an accelerator called Partnership Fund for New York City's FinTech Lab. Brief plug that their applications are still open due December 1st if you are a company coming in behind us. But those conversations that they were able to establish were really great from a perspective of understanding. We were a little bit earlier when we participated, understanding our go-to-market and who our target customer was, because sales are difficult, but not knowing who you're selling to, you're essentially spinning your wheels on a bicycle that's attached to a trainer. Like, you're really not going anywhere. So for us, it was, first step definitely is figuring out our target customer, figuring out who would buy our product, no matter how ingenious it is, if you can't figure that out, you can't sell it to anybody. Or having a lemonade stand on a dead end road, unfortunately, you're not going to make any money. So that was really key for us. In terms of sort of long-term viability, I found those introductions to be useful to build our pipeline out, so to fill it with a whole bunch of warm leads and introductions and that network that Sasha talks about. But beyond that, what we're really doing with this podcast and with social media is trying to continue to operationalize a sales pipeline, get more folks aware of things that make them a little uncomfortable maybe at first glance, because a traditional sales cycle that has you coming in and sitting across the table from an executive who doesn't expect to have his hair blown back, or an executive who has never heard of a connected home device, or doesn't use them, or doesn't feel comfortable with them, or isn't aware, in our case, of city administrative data and the power that brings to measuring risk. One sales meeting or a few sales meetings really aren't enough touch points to move folks along on the spectrum from awareness to understanding to trial to adoption to purchasing. So it's that continual sort of maintenance that I think, it's hard to quantify how long it takes. Certainly long is a good adjective, but ultimately, like, just like creating a process to systematically bring more awareness and more comfortability and understanding with what you do has been very helpful for us.
Yeah,
I think that's great advice.
Yeah, and just to add on, Carey completely hit it on the nose. I think one of the key things is doing a lot of writing. You have to be your sort of your content editor, and work on being. And I don't think this is particularly novel advice, but being a thought leader in the space, and really going out and having to tell everyone this is why this matters. And we're the absolute experts in this world, because people from within the industry, there's so many conferences and meetings that I go to where I'll meet people who have been in insurance for 30 years, and then we present the product, and there's just like, and they don't know they don't know anything that's going on, just like Carey was saying, she had the same experience. And so, but when you go in and you show, like, we're the absolute experts on this, and here's everything that we've written, and here's how this works, and also having a customer, there's also it helps to be able to give people a sense of FOMO if you just have like one customer. And it's a larger customer that you can go and say, like, hey, this is what these guys, this is what this major insurer is doing. All of a sudden, everyone's ears perk up, and they say, and they're just like, oh, someone, this our competitor is doing this. Okay, we're ready to sign up now.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. FOMO in this industry is really powerful. The fear of missing out.
Yeah. No, I agree. I love where you two have taken this, because it's something that I've been harping on aggressively for the past couple of years as I've done this podcast. Is I just call it being known. I think that helps your sales cycle when you walk into a meeting and everyone knows who you are already, and so. And they know what your product is. And I just feel like no one is going to write you a check for $100,000 if they don't know who you are. And if that first meeting is critical for you to kind of get some traction, they're not going to write you a check. So being able to walk into the meeting where it's already quasi-warm because they've seen your picture, they've seen your product, they've seen your articles, they've seen your YouTube videos, they've seen your podcast, you've now greased the skids a little bit. And now I love the way, was it you, Carey, that said blowback?
Your hair blows back.
The hair blows back. It's like, if you're going to be selling a product, at some point you're going to have to get adversarial. At some point you're going to have to push back when someone says something that is wrong, and you have to do it in a way that's delicate, right? And if you've already done that in your podcast, if you've already done that in your YouTube video, your content, you've already overcome their objection before you even step foot in that meeting. I love where you guys have taken that, because it's so important to be able to do that. It just really helps your sales cycle when you can walk into that first meeting and not have to ask basic questions, or then have them ask basic questions.
Yeah, and I think that that's relatively novel for the insurance industry. You know, I don't golf yet. I'm not very good at golf. I can swing a club,
Me
right?
neither.
But the way that we've networked and socialized in the industry for 100 years has been through that sort of interaction. And so this, I think what Sasha's picking up on is sort of a modernized methodology to have that engagement, even if you have a very big handicap when it comes to a golf course, to just get to know people and build their comfort level with you personally, and then also with your product. I use the analogy, like, I feel like Paul Revere sometimes running through insurance carriers saying the British are coming, the British are coming. And your comment made me think, like, what if they don't know who the British are, right? Like, I'm running through
Should I be scared?
the insurance carriers telling them, hey, the future's coming, man. And they're like, what are
Yeah.
you talking about, crazy lady? Like, Paul Revere had to build enough, or there had to be enough knowledge and awareness that that was a threat to that community. And in this case, we're talking about threats, talking about opportunities that the insurance carrier should be knowledgeable of. But it takes that education before we can go running through the town with, you know, on our horse with a torch to say, hey, adopt this technology because this is what's going to save you, or this is what's going to help you grow your sales in a way that keeps pace with your competitors.
Yep. I have, Sasha, I have a question for you. I'm wondering, is there anything in the water in Exeter, New Hampshire that leads towards insurance and data science excellence?
Is there somebody from, Carey,
Well,
I'm not from Exeter, but Nick did some research on you.
I recognize that you overlapped with another guest that I've had on twice on this podcast. And I'm wondering,
who's that?
If
Nick
you
Downer,
know who Chris Downer.
Chris Downer, sorry. Yeah, Chris. Yeah, we were the same class at Exeter. Yeah, him and his brother.
So
it's a very small world, yeah. What's really funny is I haven't seen him probably since maybe one of our reunions, so we haven't even talked about. I know he's talked to my co-founder, but it's a very strange and very small world. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what they put in the what they put in the water there, but that's funny that you talked to Chris. Yeah.
Well, there's something in the water because I live right down the street from the school, so I'm drinking that.
You live in Exeter?
I live in Northampton, right next door, and I drive by the campus all the time. So,
that's awesome.
So there is something in the water.
There's clearly there's something in the water, or in the snow at least. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe something from like me and Ollie's. It's maybe in the granola. That's so cool. What a small world. Yeah. How long have you lived there? Sorry, we can.
Hey, we can make this personal.
We can talk about this. Yeah.
I'm a New Englander, so I've been here for quite some time, and I think I open almost every podcast with an update on the weather when I glance out the window, because it is New England. But Sasha, instead of finishing the podcast with a couple, some of the personal questions that we ask, I thought it'd be better if I allow you and Carey Ann to finish the podcast talking about the incubator, and maybe give a bigger plug to it and talk about how much that has benefited both of your companies and both of the success that you've had as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and Sasha, I'd encourage you too to be like constructively critical. It doesn't need to be just a positive plug. I'd love to hear like the pros and cons of your company. Absolutely. Sort of participating. I'll kick it off. I mean, I think for us, we were pretty early stage, so we were raising any money, not pre-revenue, but pre-raising any money, and that had been a really helpful moment and opportunity for us to sort of organize ourselves to raise money eventually, and a great moment to speak directly behind the scenes with customers. I think con is, one of our greatest challenges was trying to figure out who was our buyer. And as a data company, I think we get really quickly pigeonholed into selling to the third-party data people that work within insurance carriers. And they do a great job to filter out, a whole bunch of companies that they shouldn't buy data from, but they come in with a perspective oftentimes of saying, no, because this isn't going to have a huge effect on our pricing models. And so that mentality is sort of closed. It can be closed-minded to alternate applications of data, like Sasha's loss prevention and alternative use cases like our underwriting risk selection use cases. So I think we got sort of pigeonholed pretty quickly into that third-party data stream and fought and clawed our way out to be able to talk to our buyers eventually. But definitely a word of advice to sort of meet with as many people as possible. If you're in an incubator, I think we had 180 interviews ourselves. I'd be curious to know what you did, Sasha, in a 4 or 5 month period. But just, spread yourself as thin as possible to meet as many people so that you can validate and question the hypothesis that you come in with.
Yeah, I think that's we probably had a similar experience in that respect, in that it was incredibly valuable. So for us, we had just flipped the company from Portugal to the U.S. And so our customers right now are mostly in Europe, and so part of it for us was getting a foothold in the U.S. insurance sort of ecosystem, and really being able to build out our network and build out the connections there, and being a part of the lab. Did that in such an incredibly fast amount of time that it could definitely be a bit of a whirlwind. It was meetings, back-to-back meetings every day, but really meeting with people who, because you don't go in with the concept of selling. We were there. And apologies again for the noise. We were there really to work on the product and to have an understanding of the market and understanding of where we would fit in, and being able to sit with the CIOs of a bunch of major insurers and have them go in and explain, this is what we like, this is what we don't like. With some of the people that we were matched with, we went through the entire process for putting together a POC and pitching the POC and being introduced to people directly involved in making these decisions. And it really helps with a bit of being new to the world here. It helped with really feeling like there was someone on your side and you had a champion who really was looking to help you succeed. And which, that's just irreplaceable type of advice and help that you can get. And at the same time, the network still continues. So if there's something new, or if there's something that I don't understand from what's going on in the industry, or if it's something that's changing, it's not just something that's for part of the 3-4 months. It's really something that maintains over time. So I will call up our mentors and our advisors from the program to just say, hey, can we get coffee, or can we meet up, or obviously also for introductions to someone else. And everyone's always happy and always willing to be there for you, which is incredible. There are obviously so we were paired with 6 companies, and there were some people were more involved than others. So I can't go and say every single company we were with is absolutely perfect, but the people who sign up, they're really involved and they're really dedicated to being a part of it, which is a really unique experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's sort of
Sasha too, to say we had a mentor. We got paired with a couple mentors. We got to pick a couple mentors ourselves. Shout out to Jennifer. My goodness, there was one time where I was sitting at a table and I just didn't. There was like a dog whistle almost. The people at the table were speaking a language that I did not speak, and it was going over my head. And I sat down with my mentor from the program and said, what just happened? And she handed me a glass of wine across the table. She's like, oh, sweetie, let me help you. And she knew exactly what was going on because she had been through that process a few times before. So I don't know if you had this similar experience with a mentor, just sort of being able to cut through the fat and give you the advice that, this is what's happening, sweetie.
Oh yeah, no. So my shout out would be to Sean Lee, who
Great
one
guy.
day I called him to get coffee, and asked for some advice. And we had this coffee where he took out a pen and was explaining the history of sort of the history of this of MGAs and of part of the insurance process and how things were set up and on regulation and some things that that was like insider knowledge that I just was not familiar with, and opened a whole new view on how to think about sales and explaining certain pain points that if you're not from the industry or haven't been working in it for a while, I wasn't familiar with yet. And it was like an hour of his time and and a coffee, and he was just so willing and so helpful. And being able to find people like that, it's challenging. And it was really it was one of those things where if anything, even just being able to have coffee with him once a month is a pretty good takeaway.
Yeah, great guy. Sean Lieb from Marsh McLennan, also a great mentor of ours as well. I think at one point he turned to me and he said, "Carey, make the sale." And I was like, okay, I can do that. Just a good shove in the right direction.
This has been an awesome conversation. I kind of wish it wouldn't end, but I want to respect Sasha's exhaustion for flying 20 hours.
No, this is totally fine.
Yeah, so
thank you for having it.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming on, and I know that you'll probably end up being a guest with Carey Ann on sometime in the future, but really hats off to both of you for having the guts. Most people don't. It's a big step to take, and both of you are, just in my conversation with you, you sound like thought leaders. It's hard to tell because you're talking a language I don't exactly understand, so I kind of have to give you the benefit of the doubt. But Sasha, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy travel schedule to join Carey Ann and myself.
No, thank you. And Carey Ann, I think we need to do a road trip to New Hampshire. I think that's the next step.
That sounds like a plan. I will pack my warm winter jacket that I just purchased in the South. So I've got a winter jacket to put to good use. It sounds like a plan.
Sasha, we will do a live podcast in the Exeter Inn. How's that?
Oh goodness, that sounds like a
great.
Drunken revelry will go down. Maybe we don't film that one.
Awesome.
Sounds perfect.
Thank you so much, Sasha and Carey Ann.
Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone. And until next time, my guest has been Sasha Dewitt from Habit and Carey Ann Nadeau of Open Data Nation. So until next time, thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.